everyone, and welcome back to Sip and Spin. My name is Skylar, and over there in a cloak shirt, or hoodie, is Brittany.
Hello! This is a variety podcast where we talk about anything, everything, and nothing.
Mostly nothing. It usually ends up being nothing.
Mostly nothing, yes, because it's hard to stay focused here at Sip and Spin, but we try. We try.
The alcohol mixed with me having ADHD just...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure TikTok taught me that I also have ADHD, but it's very undiagnosed, and I'm like, cool.
So two ADHD hosts who drink.
Yes, aren't you glad you're here?
We're both wearing anime stuff today.
We are. I'm guessing yours is haiku.
Yeah. This is my Akashi jersey.
I like your little buttons, too.
Thanks.
I'm trying to see what that one says.
It says, I'm with the band.
Oh, okay.
And then this one has a smiley face on it. And then that one's got the PSP logo.
I know what that one is.
And then it's
the
a rainbow.
Logo.
PlayStation, whatever. I don't know systems. I'm not a gamer.
But that is the actual the rainbow is part of the old school PlayStation.
Yeah, I love that. Lana's going to be loud.
So, what are we drinking today?
So today we got a drink we like, which is exciting. So we got a cooking episode with
a drink we like.
Oh, no, a drink we like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Red wine was current event.
Right.
So we did film those. We recorded those out of order. So for us, our last drink was red wine. But for you guys, it was also a drink we like. So kind of got that back to back, but I'm not complaining.
It's 2 good weeks in a row. After the rough week that was current events, we got a cooking episode with the drink we like, and now we just got to watch a movie and drink and talk about it with the drink we like.
Yeah, we didn't say that. Yeah, our topic this week is movie. So we both watched a movie, and we're going to just, chat about it and talk about it. So it might be, a casual episode, but...
Yeah. And I will have, a little disclaimer when we get to that. But first, let's get into our drinks and tell the people what we are drinking.
Yeah, so what are you drinking?
I am drinking the Barefoot Peach Moscato.
Sounds very sweet.
It's actually, well, I took it to the birthday party I went to last night, because last night I went to a birthday party, and I drank an entire bottle of wine and did 21 Jell-O shots and woke up without a hangover. So basically, I'm a god. I can't be killed. And I'm invincible, so now I can do whatever I want. And I don't have to worry about the consequences.
That's the ego boost.
I'll try some of it. And they were like, no, it's sweet, but there's a bit of tartness to it. I was like, interesting. I was like, well, I just got it because peaches are my favorite fruit, and I like anything peach flavored. So,
yeah.
So what are you drinking?
I am just drinking a gin and tonic, but so I saw on TikTok, I saw the Hendrick's gin is some of my favorite gin, and they also make the Midsummer, which
I was about to ask, I was like, is that where you get the Midsummer?
So that was for a while, that was all I would buy. And then I saw on TikTok they have a lunar one with a moon on it, and it's moon witchy themed. And I was like, I want it. Cannot find it in this town. Mm-hmm. So we saw this other one. I forget what it's called, but it's got an eye on it, so it's kind of old school, retro-ish looking, and it has wormwood and absinthe in it. So it's still kind of witchy, but it's not the lunar, which is still...
Isn't that the thing that people have in their houses that cause cancer?
Asbestos?
Oh!
Absinthe is an alcohol. The green fairy, from Moulin Rouge, they drink absinthe. Get high.
Oh.
Asbestos is the mold. Oh, that's staying in.
I know what words are.
Yeah, she wants to be a writer.
I'm giving up. My dream is dead now.
Oh, that was
Brittany
funny.
killed it.
That's funny. How is it my fault? Well, anyways, I guess I'll take a drink of my mold gin now.
I'm sorry. Cheers. Delicious. And now we try each other's. I've always wanted to try a gin and tonic, but I've been scared.
You probably won't like it. If I made it with the Midsummer, you might like it a little bit more, but...
I could get used to it.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
It is a little different.
I probably would never order it for myself, and spend money on it, but it's not bad.
I love just a simple gin and tonic.
What do you think of the wine?
Wasn't as sweet as I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Very peachy though. So
yeah.
I also really like peaches, so not bad. Okay, So, should we talk about how we picked a movie and then what movie it is?
Yes. And I will say, this is the first time we've done movies. You guys know that, as this is. So the notes, like, especially my notes, could be a little sporadic. It's the first...
Mine are all over the place.
It's the first time we've done something like this. So maybe, like, next time it'll kind of go a little smoother. But, like, when I was, like, trying to take notes, I'm like, I'm not sure how I should do this. So I just kind of, like, wrote down my reaction to the movie.
I think that's fine. And I think if you go into this episode, like, you're just talking about a movie with a friend, it's gonna be a lot more enjoyable. So pretend we're your friends and we're just talking about a movie together.
And please actually be my friend.
And please be Skylar's friend. So yeah, so it might be a little all over the place. It might be a little sporadic. Definitely spoiler warning right here, right now. I'll probably say it again later, but the movie that we watched and picked, it is a movie that is better when you don't know what's going to happen, because it's one of those movies. So if you are at all interested in the movie, don't listen to the rest of this episode.
Yeah.
But go watch it and then come listen.
Yeah, because we'll tell you what the movie is before we start talking about it, and if you haven't seen it, then stop the episode, go watch the movie, and then come back.
Or you're one of those people that like spoilers, then that's fine, because I have met people like that.
Me!
So, I've met a couple of people like that.
My friend always gets mad at me because I was like, what's going to happen in this next episode? Like, I need to know. And then she, like, refused to tell me, so I looked it up, and I was like, you didn't tell me that this was going to happen. And she was like, you went and looked it up? I was like, yes, I needed to know. Like, it gives it, like, the reason I rewatch the same show so many times is because I know what's going to happen. And when I watch new stuff, I get anxious. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're like that, then listen away.
Yeah, I texted Brittany pretty upset about
Yeah, I'll share a picture of it. So yes, let's talk about how we even picked a movie. I think I told Skylar that she could pick.
Yes.
And then Skylar was very Skylar about it. And so what did you do?
I made a wheel.
Another wheel.
We wrote down like 14 different genres of movies and we spun it and we got a thriller movie. Mm-hmm. So Richard and Brittany banded their genius brains together and came up with a list of movies to pick from. And I wanted to do another wheel, but they were like, no, just watch the trailers and then pick a movie. So I just kept we watched all these different trailers and I just kept ticking them off like one by one. I was like, okay, not this one, not this one. I was like, put this one in the maybe pile, maybe pile, maybe pile. And then when it got down to the end, it was like the last three, I was like, not this one, not this one. Okay, so we're going with this one. And it
made her pick.
Yeah.
But yeah, we spent like 3 hours just watching movie trailers.
Oh, yeah.
But it was fun.
It was fun.
So, what did we pick? Or what did you pick?
Picked Shutter Island.
Yes. If you have never seen it, but you want to, big spoiler warning, because this movie got some spoils we could ruin for you. So, yeah. Fair warning now.
So definitely, and it is a good movie, so I definitely recommend it. So if you're someone who, like, anyone who's listening to this, you need to watch Shutter Island. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. But if you haven't watched it and are okay with spoilers, then stick around. Yeah. But definitely recommend it. It was really good. It made me cry.
I heard you. You texted me that, so I'm very interested in what made you cry. So we watched Shutter Island. Skylar, for the first time, I had only seen it once before, a really long time ago. So it was kind of like watching it for the first time for me, except I did know the ending. Like, I knew everything that was happening. But a lot of the details in between, I was like, oh yeah, or oh shit, I forgot about that. And also, once you've watched it one time and you go back, you start to pick up on all of the little tells, and you're like, wow, it's so obvious. So that was interesting.
Well, I, pretty much called it from the beginning. Or at least I thought I called it. Because I still don't actually know the way it ended, because it kind of, went back. But I had, it kind of called from the get-go.
Okay. So, just a little bit of a background in general. So, this movie came out in 2010. It was directed by Martin Scorsese. It, of course, stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Ruffalo, Michelle Williams, Sir Ben Kingsley, Emily Mortimer, and more. Those were the big names. It is classified as a mystery thriller. It is also rated R, though. So there is violence, language, and some nudity. Full-on peen So if you don't like that, just take that into account. When he's in Ward C, there's a full-on penis shot.
I missed that.
It's a group of like 3 men in a cell, and they're just completely naked.
I missed that.
Well, they are behind like bars.
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, full on penis. So, fair warning.
It rated 8.2 out of 10 on IMDb, 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 33% on Metacritic. And it was also written by Laeta Kalogridis, and it earned 29. Nope, that's not how you read that. 299.5 million in the box office.
40.2 million just in opening weekend alone.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I have it written down that it was a neo-noir psychological thriller.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Which just means it's a noir film with updated theme styles, content, visual elements, and media. And a noir film is like a stylish Hollywood crime movie with a like twisted wit, like there's a twist ending or something.
And something I didn't know, I don't know if you saw this when you were looking at it, that it was actually based on a book from 2003.
I did see that.
By Dennis Lehane.
I haven't read that book, but yeah, I did see that it was based off of a book.
So I haven't read the book either, but I didn't even know it was like based on a book until I was like researching. I was like, oh, that's cool. Did you also see that the title is an anagram for Truths and Lies?
Ah.
If you rearrange Shutter Island, it says Truths and Lies.
That kind of makes sense because of all the anagrams that come up later.
Yes, I thought that was really cool. Very clever for the writer.
Yes, Laeta Kalogridis.
Well, Dennis Lehane wrote the book.
I thought you meant the movie. Yes.
The book is also called Shutter Island, yeah. It was also filmed in only 4 months.
I didn't know that.
In 2008. Cool. So it was filmed and completed in 2008, but it wasn't released until 2010. Because it's pretty stylized, so I'm sure there was a lot of editing. But before Mark Ruffalo was cast as Chuck, Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio were looking at either Robert Downey Jr. or Josh Brolin for the character. Which is all funny because all 3 of those people are in the Marvel movies together. So it's like, weird. There was also apparently a video game based on the movie that was released for a PC. Didn't know about that.
We should stream that sometime.
So I'd be interested if you could even find it. I've never heard of it. Mark Ruffalo actually got his role as Chuck by sending Martin Scorsese a fan letter saying how much he wanted to work with him.
That's cute.
That's so cute. And it seems very Mark Ruffalo from what I've like seen of him. It's like, yeah, you're kind of weird and quirky like that. I get it. But I just thought that was so funny. And Scorsese was like, this man will be Chuck.
I love that.
I thought that was cute.
Mark Ruffalo's precious.
Yes, I love him. I always have.
So the setting is in 1954, and it starts with 2 U.S. Marshals, Teddy Daniels, who is Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and his new partner, Chuck Owl, who is Mark Ruffalo's character. And they are headed to Shutter Island, which houses a mental hospital for the criminally insane. And the other part of the island is called Rock Bluffs, and it's from behind the mental hospital all the way to the water, and the only way on or off the island is from the dock.
Yes. Yeah. So, pretty isolated, dangerous, whatever. Like, I was picturing, like, something similar to Alcatraz. So, that was really the only thing to attribute it to. Because I did look it up, and from what I could see, there aren't any island mental institutions anywhere. So it's completely made up. It's not a real place, but it is very like Alcatraz-y, which was probably some of the reference.
I forgot. I was about to get to the paragraph where they're like why they're going to Shutter Island, and then I was like, I had a note that said, okay, Skylar's ADHD brain here. I cannot stop laughing at the background music. It's like creepy orchestra music with an occasional sharp dun, and I can't focus on the dialogue or what's going on because I can only focus on the background music, which is very over dramatic, and it's very like noir style, especially since silent films like mainly did rely on like the overly dramatic scores. But it was just so hilarious that I could not pay attention to what they were talking about because I couldn't not focus on the background music.
I loved the ominous background music, and I think they actually did steal a few notes from, I think it was The Shining, is what they used a couple of the chords for it, which, if you know The Shining and all the connotations
there.
Here's
Johnny one with the axe in the bathroom.
Yeah, it's a horror psychological movie, and so that like tone would be very like jarring for that connotation.
But for some reason, it just kept cracking me up because they were just like sitting there talking on the boat and walking up to the dock, and it was just like, dun dun. And I was like, what is happening?
So yeah, as you said, it's 1954. We open up on a boat. It's really foggy, and then we see Leo's character Teddy puking on the boat. It's how the movie opens. So it's already like just throws you right in. It's like, here you go.
He's seasick.
And so I don't know why I wrote seasick, not me. Do you get seasick?
I've never been on the sea.
Do you get motion sickness?
Yes.
Okay. See, none of that was anything I could relate to because I don't get any of that. So I was just curious if, like, you were like, oh, I feel for you.
I mean, I've never been seasick, but I imagine it's very close to motion sickness because, like, I mean, I have that motion sickness bracelet that I have now because, and when you would like, you were like, do you want to try VR? And I was like, I can't, like, my motion sickness is so severe, there's no way. Like, I can't sit in the back seat of a car without, like, having the urge to throw up. And sometimes even in the passenger seat, it's kind of rough. Like, even though, like, so usually it's better for me to be behind the driver's seat because I don't get motion sickness at all. And, like, the passenger seat, don't get motion sickness very often, but definitely the back seat.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would do with a boat then, because it depends also on the type of boat. Like this one, it was very rocky waters. It was like a storm was coming in, so it was very jarring. And that's one thing, but then also, like, if you've ever been on, like, a cruise, it's very subtle, but you can still, like, feel the motion. And, like, my sister doesn't usually get seasick, but she got sick on the cruise about the third day in just because it is so subtle. It's, like, almost fucking with your brain. You're like, I'm not supposed to be moving like this.
Because I've only been, like, to a lake where we've been on, like, our houseboat, and, like, but that was, like, parked. Like, we would just go out into the lake and then we're just parked there. And we'd, like, jump off and stuff, and then I'd go on, like, the little fast boats and do, like, tubing. But that's, like, so fast that it doesn't really bother you. Because, like, I'm scared of roller coasters, not because I get motion sickness, but because I just don't like heights. But since they go so fast, it doesn't bother me. Whereas, like, it's, like, the little stuff or, like, not being able to, like, see directly in front of me, like, having to look out the side window or, like, looking at the back, like, the headrest.
Yeah.
But still knowing that you're moving without being able to see, like...
Yeah. I get that. But yeah, so he's puking, he's on the boat, they're going to the island. He already looks, like, pretty crazy, pretty, like, not doing well.
Yeah.
Leo's character looks.
He looks rough.
So even, like, right now, you're like, this is your first mentioning of him, and he's the main character. You're like, huh, you don't look too good, buddy. And it's also where he meets his new partner, the other U.S. Marshal, Mark Ruffalo's character. So how did you, as a new watcher, meeting your new partner on this little bitty ship at sea, like, did you find that odd, or did you just kind of go with it story-wise?
I mean, after it was over, I was like, yeah, that is weird, because, like, wouldn't they have, like, met each other, like, floating the boat? Yeah, like, when they were getting onto the boat?
But no, they literally, like, he, like, greets him after he's done puking. They're already almost at the island, and he's like, so you're my new partner, huh? Like, that's literally when they met. It's like, that seems odd. So I was just curious, as a first-time watcher, if you just went with it for the storyline, or if you were even then kind of like, huh.
Like, as I kind of, like, once we got to the end, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, yeah that is weird. Because I was already, like, once I kind of talk about, like, why they're there, I was like, I'm getting very, like, this vibes from it. And I was like, and I don't trust...
What kind of vibes?
Okay.
Go. Yeah, tell us what you felt.
So, can I just read through that paragraph?
Yeah.
Talks? Okay. I was like, so they're on this island because a female patient has escaped and is considered very dangerous. On the way to meet Dr. Colley, Ben Kingsley, the deputy is hyping him up, talking about how he does amazing work, taking in patients no other hospital can handle, and that society deems beyond treatment. He talks about his education and how he works with intelligence agencies, and I'm getting very Outlast vibes, because if there's one thing I know, it's that any great man believing he can save the unsavable is the most dangerous, criminally insane person. Also, it's set in the 50s, and the ethical reform of psychological treatments for mentally ill patients wasn't until the late 70s, so I automatically don't trust him. And I've also watched A Beautiful Mind and read The Great Gatsby and played Little Hope, so if there's one thing I know, it's that the narrator isn't reliable. And so now I'm, like, feeling like kind of like it's more Little Hope than it is A Beautiful Mind. But, like, from the beginning, I was like, because I knew that there was going to be a twist, and I was like, and they're at like a mental hospital, or going to a mental hospital. I'm like, what if it's like a beautiful mind? Like, he's just not real. Like, he's just imagining this person, kind of like how in A Beautiful Mind, because he was schizophrenic.
So that's the way you were leaning at first. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Yeah. I think that makes sense.
But yeah, I was getting very Outlast vibes. And that comes back later in Ward C. Ward C, I was very Outlast vibes.
Yeah, Ward C was a lot happened. But a lot happened also before then, because this movie is also very long. It's over 2 hours. It's a long movie, so.
And when we were picking it, you were like, it's a long movie. I was like, I watched Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Nothing is a long movie to me anymore. It was like over 3 hours long. It's like 3 hours and 11 minutes, I think.
That's a great movie. Well, I watched the uncut one, so it's more like 5 hours long when I watch it.
Oh.
So it's a very long movie. So, yes. That is why they are on the island. So there is a patient who is missing. She seemed very dangerous, but again, it is an island. So it's weird already that they can't find her. Mm-hmm. For one, that she even quote unquote escaped. But that's the whole reason these two U.S. Marshals are going here. But you actually don't find that out until about 30 minutes into the movie. Like, you don't even know why they're there at first, really.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, so why are they here? And why are they taking these guys' guns? And, like, it's all very odd.
Yeah. And I was like, so, like, because the whole time I'm like, are we going to get to, like, why they're there? Like, why are they even here in the first place?
Yeah.
And I'm just like...
And, like, as soon as they get off the boat, all these, like, prison guards and police and security for the Institute are greeting them, and they all have, like, these big-ass rifles, and they're just, like, holding them casually up in the air, and they all seem very tense. And, like, later you learn why, because of the twist, it makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. But at the beginning, if you'd never seen this is all very strange. Because you're like, why are they greeting them like this?
Yeah, what the hell? Like, why are they taking their guns when they have all this?
Yeah, like, they have badges. Like, what? Why? Like, they might need them if the people here are that dangerous. Mm-hmm. But then, it's like, oh. So, yeah, anyways, it all seems very odd. They're being treated kind of oddly, but... Again, you kind of finally learn why they're there, and then it kind of makes sense. You're like, oh, okay, so someone escaped. This is an institute where it's supposed to be pretty dangerous people. It is an island, after all, So everyone here is, most likely a murderer in some capacity.
And they're there because they're criminally insane.
Yes, like they had to be sent here.
Yeah, because, like...
Much like Alcatraz, the worst ones were sent there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because... the Rachel Solando, who's the patient who escaped, and as Dr. Colley put heavy emphasis on the word patient after Teddy said prisoner.
Oh yes, there was a big prisoner versus patient debate, narrative. Yes. How do you feel about that? What's your views?
I kind of get where both of them are coming from, because I'm, like, very into psychology, and I wanted to be, like, a psychologist, so, and, like, part of psychology is, like, that a lot of psychologists or therapists or psychiatrists use is the unconditional positivity, which is like where they're like, even though you did this, it's fine, like, it happens. But when it becomes, like, criminally insane, I'm like, they're both. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I try and pick one side or the other, like, but with psychology it's hard to do that. Like, nature versus nurture. It's both. And, like, that's been a long-standing debate. Is it nature? Is it nurture? And it is both. And I feel like with just, I don't like to use the word insane, but, like, with insane people or people who have heavy mental illness that has affected them so greatly that they cannot live in normal society just because that's the way their brain works, I think they should be classified as patients. But I think with criminally insane people, it goes both ways, and that is a very both, because a lot of people who have a mental illness, even if it's a severe mental illness, don't kill people. Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, they are still mentally ill, so I think for that, it can go both ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I have it written down, because I was interested, because I did put a lot of emphasis on it, especially in this, like, conversation with Ben Kingsley's character, with Leo. They were... like, fighting about it a lot. And also during that is also Ben Kingsley had a quote I liked, and it was, "Sanity's not a choice." And I really liked that quote, and I was like, it's a good quote. It's also very telling for this movie. It's like, it's a good one.
Yeah, because, sanity's not a choice, insanity's not a choice. If you have, like, a mental illness, you can't help that. Yeah. Like, or any sort of, like, disability. You can't help that, whether it's a mental disability, physical disability. And people will be like, oh, well, you have a physical disability. You can't help, like, the way that life has thrown at you, but they don't treat mental disabilities the same way.
No, not at all.
Because, and like, even though I talked about earlier how the psychological treatment reforms didn't happen until the late 70s, it still sucks, like, to this day.
Yeah.
And it still isn't reformed fully. It's still not taken as seriously as it should be. But
yeah, no, I agree. And you said right off the bat, like, you were like, oh, I don't trust this doctor because of what they were saying about him and all of the, like, outlast and, like, the narrator type not trusting. How did that change after you met him and heard him speak? Because he is the one who puts the emphasis on the word patient. He is the one who's like, sanity's not a choice. And he is like, I don't want them to do ice pick lobotomies. I want to, like, let them be a person. So did that, like, warp your view?
It did, kind of.
Okay.
And I'll say why it was kind of. Because
did you think it was a red herring? Like, a red herring is a term in, like, media where they think once they're trying to make you think something so that they can pull it out from under you or, like, make you look a different way.
Yes.
Something else. Okay.
Yes. Because, like, after, like I said, it's set in 1954. I'm like, there's no way that he is an actual good psychologist. There were no good psychologists during that time. When did Freud die? Did he die in the 40s or 50s? He was born in the late 80s. I don't remember when he died, though. But that was, like, a little bit after Freud or during, like, there were no good psychologists during that time. So I was just like, okay, I agree with what he's saying. Like, yes, I agree.
But you thought he was, like, putting it on.
I was like, I don't trust him. I was like, there's something. I was like, he's lying. Like, he may act like he's all about, like, saving everyone and he just wants to help. But I was like, but I don't trust it. Because my, like, psychology history part of my brain was like, there's no way.
Fred, evil.
I was like, there's no way he's an actual good person.
Okay, I was curious because you said that. And then so what's going on is now the marshals, Leo and Mark, they want to, like, interview the staff of the hospital. They want to see who knew Rachel.
Should we talk about what Rachel did and why she ended up there?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so
the missing patient.
Yes,
Rachel.
Missing patient, Rachel Solando. She drowned all 3 of her children in a lake behind her house, drowning them one by holding their heads underwater before arranging them around the table and eating a meal. But Rachel believes her children are still alive and that the institution is her home. She thinks everyone there is people she would see normally, like if they were a delivery man, like a newspaper person. Like, she just thinks that they're just people that she would see day to day.
Like, she thinks she's at her house still with her children. Yeah.
She created a fictional universe in her mind where everyone who's there has a role. And it's like that one episode of Charmed.
Kind of, yeah, I do. Yeah. I vaguely remember what you're talking about, yeah.
Where, like, their house was turned into, like, a mental institution. And she was like, this person is, like, a demon. Like, we know him. Like, he's a demon who was dating Phoebe. And he was like, no, I'm your doctor. And she was like, no, you're a demon. We know you. Yeah. And so now, in that one, it was like, they were actually transported into a fictional world where they were in a mental institution and the guy actually was a demon. But in this one, it's kind of flip-flopped. But it's kind of like that one episode of Charmed.
I get where you're going. Yeah. So yes, that is why she is there. And what is kind of her thinking at that point. And so that's why they're also worried, because she's escaped and she doesn't think she's where she is. So not only is she dangerous because she has murdered, but she's also a danger to herself at that point because she doesn't think she's on an island. Like,
yeah, she could just walk off the cliff and not even realize
it's a rocky cliff, and it's dangerous, and there's a storm coming also. That's a big thing throughout the movie. A bad storm is, like, rolling in the whole time. Yeah,
because it starts on the boat where the guy's like,
gotta get out of here.
You gotta get out of here. And he's like, why are you in such a rush, man? And he's
chill. I'm throwing up here.
He's like, there's a storm. I'd like to get back to the mainland before that happens.
Yeah, so like, everyone's very
set up on edge. Yeah.
Very on edge about the storm and about the missing patient. And then Kingsley's character, like, you think that he's worried about her own well-being, whereas everyone else is kind of on edge because they're like, she could hurt us, etc. So yes, so that is why all of that is happening. And so then he's interviewing the hospital staff. He wants to see, like, who saw her last or whatever, and you find out she was with the doctor. A different doctor.
Dr. Sheehan.
Sheehan, yes. Who is conveniently on vacation.
Yeah, I have a note about that. I was like, Rachel's primary doctor, Dr. Sheehan, was able to leave on vacation the day after she disappeared because even though they are in a state of lockdown, they still let her primary psychiatrist literally just leave.
He's like, I gotta go to vacation.
He's like, I've been planning this for months.
And when asked why... And when Leo asked Ben Kingsley character, oh, why did you let him go on vacation after she's missing? And he just simply goes, he's a doctor. And then the hospital staff, they all laugh because it's like a big joke. Like, oh, he's a doctor. What are you going to do about it? Because this is the 50s also. So that was true for the most part because they probably were like, oh, my patient's missing? That sucks. I got a plane to catch. Bye. I gotta go.
I've been planning this for months.
I gotta get drunk right now. So that is what is up with that. And so Leo's like, call him. I want to talk to this guy. But of course, with the storm...
There's no connection.
There's no communication lines. They are all down. So essentially, they are locked off from the best insight into her at that point is her primary doctor.
There was a note under the floorboard saying, the law of Thor, who is 67. That was a note that Rachel Solando left under her floorboard. And I also said, every single nurse, guard, and doctor is hiding something, especially Dr. Colley. I don't trust his skeevy ass.
Yeah, I even have a note. It's like the weirdest hospital staff ever.
I know.
And then the question is like, are they acting like to make it seem weirder? Or do you think that's how they wanted to portray, like, if you work at a mental hospital, do you think that would be your personality? Just kind of like very laissez-faire. They didn't really care. They were very like nonchalant. No one wanted to answer his questions because they were simply like, weirder than what? Like, we're at a mental institute. Like, how do you answer any of these questions? Because their definition of normal was going to be so far different from any U.S. Marshals coming in from Boston. So they're like, it was just all very strange.
Yeah, I was just like, they're all hiding something. I was like, they're all working together to hide something.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we get to meeting the German doctor, and there's the whole men of violence versus violent men.
And also, the most lavish room in a mental institution. Like, that's my main mansion. Note. I'm like, what is this? How are they living?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there is that debate that you brought up. Did you have anything more on it?
Kind of. I was like, because it came from, like, him being in the war, and I was like...
Which we didn't mention that.
No. So Teddy was in World War II.
And you're getting little bits of flashbacks. Like, every now and then he has, like, kind of like a headache or something, like a twitch going on, and you see a flashback to being in the war and stuff that he did or saw. So...
Yeah, and because he had, like, the rough part of it, because he was at the death camp. He saw the people, all the, so I was like, oh, yes, the war trauma flashbacks.
Yes.
And then I added, and this was when my first note came of me calling it, I was like, OMG, what if Teddy is suffering so heavily from PTSD and the war and having to see Holocaust death camps that this is his imagination and he's not actually a U.S. Marshal at all. He's a patient living in his fictive world like the supposed Rachel. Like I said, I watched A Beautiful Mind and played Little Hope.
Which, I mean, very fair. Like, that, and, like, probably wouldn't blame him at that point either, because it's like,
rough.
Shit, I mean.
I would want to live in a fictional world, too, if I had to
I would want to be a, marshal solving crimes and helping people, so fuck, if that's how it is. Sorry, Teddy. But yeah, so this is where you see a lot more of that. He kind of loses his temper for the first time, and this instance also.
Which is understandable, because it was in the 1950s. He was fighting for the U.S., saw what the Germans were doing in the death camps, so when he, like, called him out and was like, oh, like, yes, your English is very good, but, like, I saw a lot of German people who had really good English, but you guys are a little rough on your consonants, so I could tell. Yeah. And so he lost his temper because...
This other new doctor we're meeting, he is German. And so then there's also is it wrong to move to another country? Which, no, it is not.
No.
So, But back then, of course, even still now, people have issues with that whole thing, which is a whole other topic.
Which is like, when we talked, what episode was it we talked about? People, like, we both knew, like, German foreign exchange students, and, like, my friend was, like, getting, like, people calling, like, being angry with her because she was German.
Yeah.
But then we were talking about how Nazis were, like, a thing, but that weren't German anymore. They were white American men.
Yes.
Who were...
I remember talking about this. I don't remember the
what
episode.
Yeah, I don't either. But, like... Which now, it like doesn't make sense to be that way anymore. That is over, that is done. But in that time, when it was 1954, if you were in the war and saw what had happened, you're going to have an emotional reaction. And even if it's not correct, it's understandable.
Yeah. And, like, up until now, you've just seen, like, little bitty flashback glimpses. But when he's here with this man in this house is when you see the longest... flashback, and it's rough because there's blood, there's murder, there's someone with like his face coming off.
Yeah, because he had tried to kill himself before they got there, and then you see all the dead bodies in the snow, and it's just it's bad. And
there's like I forget which piece of music was playing, but it like brought him back because that was also playing then. Which I did read that was a continuity error, and that song was actually not composed yet for the time that it was set.
That's hilarious.
Fun fact.
That is called an anachronism.
Yeah. We talked about that on another one, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
It was in the very first episode because I was like, that's weird that Julius Caesar, like, that's an anachronism. And you're like, where did you get Julius Caesar? I was like, well, I guess technically it's not an anachronism because Julius Caesar isn't actually there. I put him there.
It's a Skylarism.
I made Julius Caesar into an anachronism in that first episode.
Yes, wow. Throwback to episode 1. Wow.
That was a fun episode.
It was. We haven't gotten any better.
No. I still don't know what I'm talking about.
It's fine. So Leo kind of loses his temper, blows up. They leave this man.
Was the dead wife, like, flashback, was that later?
You saw that also briefly. So Mark Ruffalo asks, are you married?
Yeah.
So Mark, like when they were first meeting each other, and then you learn that his wife died in a fire.
But there was the flashback where it was like,
and there was
wife
little
was
ones
saying that, like, Rachel is still there, and then there was like latest, and I was like, what is latest?
And after this little blow up, he has a flashback with one of my favorite shots of this movie. He's walking down the green hallway to his wife, and it's like very like green 50s stylized, and she's in her blonde hair and her dress, and she's yelling about him about alcohol, which is notable, which he was also offered a drink from the German man, and he refused because he doesn't drink, just saying. And then so you get this really great like hallway shot, and then he's talking to his dead wife, and she does bring up Andrew Laetus. So that becomes a new, again, like 40 minutes into this movie, a whole new like storyline just got brought in.
Because all she said was like latest, and I was like, latest? What is latest? I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, I said all of a sudden Andrew Laetus. So she brings up Andrew Laetus and Rachel still being there. And then she kind of, there's this really like, she turns around to the window, and then her back starts burning and like crumbling.
Well, I did make a note about that. I was like, there's a lot of blood in this trauma dream for her to have been killed by smoke inhalation. And I was like, oh, okay, no, yeah, she turned into ash just now. But like, she was covered in blood. And I was like, weird if she supposedly died from smoke inhalation, which he heavily pointed out when he was like, when he was talking to Chuck, he was like, she died in a fire, but she died of smoke inhalation. And he like put emphasis on the fact that it was smoke inhalation. I was like, that's a lot of blood for some smoke inhalation.
Yeah.
But then she did turn to ash, so I was like,
Yeah, that was a really cool scene. That's like I said, that was probably one of my favorite scenes of the movie.
It was a really good scene.
From like a cinematography standpoint, all of the flashbacks I really liked how they shot it, in which I do believe they actually shot all of this movie on actual film. So, which I thought was really cool, and it was very stylized, and it was to make it look more like it was in the time period. As someone who has taken like a couple of cinematography classes, I definitely appreciated those little like details and composition stuff and color. It's very nice. And the movie as a whole has like a very like blue tone to it, which goes to the neo-noir look which is very nice. And then so after that, he's like, I want to talk to the patients that know Rachel.
Ah, yes. I have some notes about that.
Okay, so yeah, I don't have a whole lot, so I'll just like banter off of you for it. But yeah, so he wants to talk to people she was in group therapy. Mm-hmm. So people who were in her group with her.
And he talked to 2 of them. Mm-hmm. And the first one, I have just like a very small note. I was like, oh, yes, a man with sexual insecurity attacking a woman doing her job because he's an innocent man and she was a whore trying to seduce him by asking him for a glass of water.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, that is a lot of slurs in one sentence.
Yeah, he was not a great person.
No.
And then he does like the pencil thing.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't get the pencil scribbling. Like, I knew it was aggravating him, but I didn't know why. I couldn't figure that out.
Because of the end of the movie. I'll bring it back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe if I watched it again, then I would get it.
No, like, it's more like an inferred thing. I'll tell you my theory on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, because I didn't get it. I was like, I could see that it was aggravating him. He knew it was aggravating him, and that's why he did it. But I just couldn't figure out, like, why. Yeah. I was like, what is... Yeah.
So it's another like, look into the twist of the movie.
Yeah. So then they talk to Bridget Kearns, and...
I like her.
I do too.
She murdered her husband with an axe. I still like her.
She's telling them about Rachel, and like, but it almost seems like it was a speech given to them.
It seemed very
Dr.
rehearsed.
To rehearse, and that's what I said. And like, Teddy called it out later, but I was like, as I was listening to it, I was like, this sounds rehearsed. And then Teddy was like, did you hear that? Like, that sounded rehearsed. And I was like, okay, so it wasn't just me.
And this is you, Born, being like, I told you I don't trust him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, she also said Dr. Sheehan was a nice and good doctor and wouldn't do anything unethical like making passes at the patients. And she then scribbled something down in Teddy's notebook, but when...
Well, she asked for a glass of water, and Mark Ruffalo's character left to get it. And then she hurriedly wrote a note to Teddy.
In his notebook, but when he asked about Laetus, she started shaking and said she had never heard of him and abruptly left. Mm-hmm. Which I was like, weird.
Yeah, very weird. And he also asked the man also about Andrew Laetus. Mm-hmm. So he was asking everyone about Laetus. All of a sudden, it was thrown out. Like, even Mark Ruffalo was character was like, what?
Yeah.
Who is this?
So he explained to Chuck who Laetus was. He was like, okay, so Andrew Laetus was the maintenance man that's pyromania caused the fire that killed Teddy's wife and ended up there, which is why Teddy requested the Rachel case, because he talks about that he saw this case and he requested to be put on it.
Because he wants to find Andrew Laetus because he blames him for the death of his wife.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, if we go back to my theory, what if Teddy Daniels is Andrew Laetus and killed his own wife, and this is all his fictive world? And that was my next note.
That would be plausible. Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Because I was like, that would be... Because I was like, at that point, I was leaning heavily on the theory that this was his own fictional universe. I was like, he's created all of this. Okay. I was like, because I was having like flashbacks to Little Hope. I was like, this is all in his head.
Yeah, I didn't even think that.
I was like, I fell for it once, and I'm not falling for it again.
Yeah, if you are like, what the hell is Little Hope? Much like Andrew Laetus, because we just throw it out there. You can go watch us play that on YouTube.
Yeah, you've only uploaded 2 parts.
Oh, did I not? I guess I need to do that. I'll upload the rest eventually. And then they kind of go, he's telling him about all this. The storm is rolling in. They're kind of like exploring the island at this point, running around it, because now Leonardo's character is like, I don't trust these people. Mm-hmm.
And Mark Ruffalo's character was like, well, like, if we can't find Andrew Laetus here, but if he is here, there's one place to look. They go to a graveyard. And I was like, oh my God, please don't go dig through a graveyard. I was like, please do not dig up buried bodies. I was like, this is a bad idea. And that's when you find out what Bridget wrote down in the notebook.
Yes, which is run.
Yeah, and cryptic. I was like, I went, OMG, Bridget wrote down run. Yikes, bitch. Mm-hmm. And then, so they got found after they broke into one of those special, like, building coffins. And I meant to ask you, what does Ling mean in English? Because I forgot the English word for what they were in. Lingme.
Weren't they in, like, a mausoleum type thing? Yeah,
that's it! Mausoleum! I was like, special coffin building. Because I couldn't think of what it was.
Special coffin.
I was like, okay, breaking into one of those special building coffins. And I was like, what does Lingme mean in English? Because that's what I'm talking about, but I can't think of the word in English. I was like, I could think of it in fucking Chinese for some reason, but I couldn't think about what it's called in English.
Mausoleum.
Yeah, mausoleum. They broke into a mausoleum, and that's when the deputy finds them again.
Yes, and before that, though, Leo kind of starts telling his theory that it's about they're working for the government, and they're like, all of the different like nukes and like bringing up the Nazis again, which he is familiar with. So that's why he's all of a sudden like, I don't trust these people. They're doing something else. It's not an institution like it seems. Yeah,
and I was like, I did have some more notes on that, and I was like, I'm gonna cry. I can't do Holocaust stuff because he did have like a background or a flashback, and I was like, it's the worst thing that ever happened. It always makes me so sad. I can't tell you how hard I sobbed while reading and watching Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and I also cried while reading Night by Elie Wiesel. That was a sad book.
Yeah,
and then
both of those were very sad.
They talked about the experiments, and I was like, oh yes, that is very Outlast if they're doing experiments on the patients, because that happened in Outlast.
Yeah. So that's Teddy's new theory, and he wants to blow the door wide open on it now.
Yeah. And then Chuck brings up the theory about, like, what if this place has, like, high ties and government ops? Like, the deputy talked about how Dr. Colley dealt with intelligence agencies, and Teddy was like, why would a psychologist need to talk with, like, the CIA? Like,
yeah.
And so then Chuck brings up the theory that, like, it could be a place with, like, high ties and government ops faking an escape to get the marshals there, because Teddy was asking questions about Laetus and, like, what had happened with that.
Right.
So maybe they got him there and, like, faked an escape.
Which was, I mean, that happened back in war times and stuff, and like shit like that probably still happens, so it was a viable theory.
It was, and I was like, because I was like, this could actually be a thing. I was like, if it's real, like, because I was still like on the theory that it was his imagination, I was like, if this is real, like, I believe it. Like,
yeah, like, and that's the thing, this movie, it throws you in so many different directions. You're like, so which one is true? But then you're also like, and how do they connect? But it does a great job at the end, tying it all up. But now we have this new theory to go on, and you're like, oh, maybe this is the twist. And it is, like, back into the war stuff, the Nazi stuff. It would make sense. And then they find them in the mausoleum in the middle of the storm, and even Leo's character is like, well, then how did they find us if they're not tracking us already and all this? And Mark Chucks is like, it's an island, boss. They're always going to find us. Like, it's very casual, but it's also very like, oh yeah, you are on an island. Yeah. Like, you can't go far. So that was kind of that little turn of events. And then they get put in orderlies' outfits because their outfits are soaking wet, so they lose their suits, and now they just look like workers. And then all of a sudden, they go into this meeting with all of these suit tie-wearing men, and you're like, how did they get here during a storm if they're on an island? Like, where have these suit-wearing men been? Yeah, because, like, both Dr. Colley and the German doctor are both there, but then there's all these people you haven't really seen. There's, like, 7 new people, white men, and you're just, like, wearing ties and smoking cigars and drinking drinks and having a meeting, and you're like, where did you come from? This feels out of place. Yeah. It's like a fucking monsoon outside, and it was just so weird. I was always like, even upon multiple viewings of this, I'm still like, this still doesn't make sense to me. Where these men came from. Teddy kind of threw like this big old fit. He's like, why are we here? Like, blah, blah, why did you bring us here? And like, we need to find out what's going on. Like, if you're gonna sit here, like, there's a storm outside, like, and he's like, yelling at them while they're all in this meeting. And then Dr. Colley was like, don't make a fuss. Like, we don't need you. We found Rachel. And I was like, oh, yes, of course, because she's just miraculously been found with not a single sign of having been outside at all. Yes. So, Rachel was found. So then the doctor takes the marshals to Rachel's cell to, like, meet her, talk to her. And this is where you kind of see... She thinks she's in her house. She thinks these men are like policemen, and they ask her to recount her day, and she goes into this whole story about getting her kids off to school, making like food, just like living a normal day, going grocery shopping and all this. And she just tells this whole story for them.
And she thinks they're police because they were coming around. She thinks they were asking about, like, someone having, like, a communist manifesto.
Yeah. And so, like, seeing any sketchy people or something is what they, like, ask her. And so they're like, can you just retell us your day so that we know if you ran into anyone? And so she goes on this whole long thing of, like, all of this, like, her delusion, basically, of her day. And then after all of that, and then she suddenly looks at Teddy, Leila's character, and she's like, and then I thought of you. And you're like, what?
Yeah, at first I was like, huh? It's like, why is she thinking of him?
And then it becomes this whole thing where she is suddenly seeing him as her dead husband. Jim. And it's kind of like woman with seeing her dead husband meets a man who has flashbacks of his dead wife. And even at that, you're like, that's interesting that would be connected. But yeah, so she's yelling at him like, I buried you, how are you here? And she like freaks out.
Because they were like hugging and stuff, and he was like apologizing and being like, I'm so sorry.
Playing into it.
And then she was like,
and then she flips her switch.
She's like, no, you're dead. I buried you. You're not here anymore. What are you doing?
Yeah. So it was very jarring. Yes. And then so after that, she kind of freaks out. They have to leave the room or whatever. And then Teddy gets more head problems. He kind of has like a head episode. And then Ben Kingsley and Mark Ruffalo's characters are yelling at him to take the pills.
Yes. And I wrote down, I was like, there is no way Dr. Colley is giving him Advil whatever the fuck, aspirin for his migraines. I was like, he's drugging him with the experimental drugs, isn't he? Because Teddy Daniels is actually a patient there living in the world he created. And I was like, that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, it was also Mark Ruffalo's character. It was Chuck also being like, take the pills, take these pills, and he's like, he doesn't want to. Yeah. He's like, no.
Like, I'll be fine.
And I think even if that's your first viewing, even if up till now you didn't have any like guesses as to what it could be, I think from this point you kind of have to be like, this is the turning point.
Yeah, like something weird is happening.
Because you don't just tell someone with a headache, take the pills. Like, that's one, very threatening.
Yeah.
And
it's
two,
very pushy.
It's not what you would say. You'd be like, have some pain medication, not take
pills. Take these pills.
So very much a turning point. I think we're maybe like an hour in-ish now to the movie, if even that.
Yeah. So
still we have like a whole other half of the movie. But even at this, I think you could rightfully say that this is kind of where the cracks start forming, and it's the turning point. So he takes the pills, and then we go through another dream sequence.
Yes, and I was like, his trauma nightmares are giving me the creeps.
And so this one was a big one, because it was kind of a combination of everything from his mind. So you start with the dead bodies in the snow. It's very dark, colors muted. The ominous music is there that you love so much. And then there is a girl, and she says, you should have saved me. You should have saved us all. Very chilling quote.
Yeah,
very like, oof. Don't want to be in your brain.
Then there was like a random scream, which startled me so badly. I like jumped.
Yeah, and then it screamed, and then the dream shifts, and there's a room on fire again, and you see Andrew Laetus in a chair with a match, and then they kind of have a conversation, and then Andrew Laetus is going on, and he's just like, no hard feelings, and then it turns into Chuck is the one he's talking to in the dream, and then there's another scream, and it's the dead kids and Rachel.
Yes.
And she says, give me a hand here. And already you're like, what is happening? Yeah. There's so many different connecting story points.
I'm like, why are they all covered in blood if they were drowned? I'm like, it's the same with the wife. And then I was like, maybe the dreams are like hints of the truth. And I was like, maybe she didn't drown her own children. She killed them and then put them in the lake to clean them up. And I was like, and somehow fucking Teddy is connected to them, but I don't get it.
So yeah, so she's all bloody. There's 3 dead kids at her feet. She's like, give me a hand here. He picks up one of the children, and he's like, I could get in trouble. And then, whatever, he ends up putting the kids in the lake with Rachel. She says, see, aren't they beautiful? Ugh, I hated that quote.
I have another, like, when you would get to the end, and, like, what I was like...
Okay, yeah. And then he wakes up. So we went through like 4 different storylines that we've already kind of touched on, but this really kind of succincted, I think, in his thinking for you to be like how he connects everything. And then he wakes up only to see his dead wife. So he's still not awake. So it looks like he wakes up. It's one of those classic movie, like sitting, laying in the bed, you wake up, and then you're still asleep. Because he sees his dead wife. She wants him to kill Laeta's dead. She says, kill him dead. Which he never wanted to kill Andrew Laetus.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, visions of his dead wife are like, kill him. You have to kill him. Blah, blah, blah. And then he wakes up again to a loud commotion. So he's actually awake now. But it was very like, weird dreams. Oh, wake up, you're safe. Dead wife telling you to kill a man. Wake up again.
Yeah. And then everything's crazy.
Yeah, and then like there's a whole craziness going on at the institution. It's basically like a patients on parade type thing because everything's like shut down, and you see patients like running around and the orderlies trying to catch them and bring them in, and like people are
like
escaping.
The storm like shut down the power.
Yeah, so like the electric fencing isn't working and all that, so it's chaos.
They were like, nothing is working. The security's not working. Let's go to Ward C.
Yeah, so this is where the famous Ward C comes in. I'll let you maybe take the reins on this one just because this is your first time watching it. You might have a lot more to say. But I didn't write down a whole lot. I was just like, oh, he got real mad at the man that just wanted to play tag with him.
I was like, okay. So I was like, yes, Ward C, I've been waiting for them to get in there. I need to know the secrets of that place immediately. And I was like, okay, never mind. It's empty and wet, and there's weird laughter and screaming, and the layout is looking very much like Outlast, and that game gives me the creeps, and this is giving me the creeps. I don't like it. And I was like, okay, what the hell is going on with that one patient? I was like, no, Teddy, don't kill him. He was just saying he didn't want to know about the outside world. And I was like, and I get it, because, like, the outside world sucks.
Yeah, but it's good to note, which I also made note of, Teddy literally almost kills this patient. He is choking the life out of this man. Chuck... Finally, they got separated is what happened.
Yeah.
So this man, he runs up to Leo's character, tags him, like tag it, like literally just wanted to play tag. Pissed Teddy off. Teddy goes off after him. Gets separated from Chuck. And then they catch up, and it's like the thing. He doesn't want to leave. The world is scary. Other patients have made similar comments. The lady who killed her husband, for instance, she's like, I shouldn't leave, TVs are weird.
Yeah, like...
I hear enough voices in my head or something is what she said. But yeah, literally almost kills a man. Just this random patient. And it's like, not a good look, Teddy. Not a good look. Because
he's all like, I'm not a violent man, like I'm not... And I'm like, are you?
Question mark. So Chuck finds another, like a security officer or something comes to... Those two take this man to get help. Teddy is left alone in Ward C. Yes. Which I'm like, should that happen?
Yeah, after he just tried to kill somebody. Yeah, and it's just... And then I was like, oh great, there's someone in the background whispering Laetus. I was like, how much do you want to bet that that's because they're calling to him because he's walking around, so they're calling to Laetus because he's Laetus. And I was like, I'm so tense right now. And I was like, oh my God, his secret confidant about the place, like how he found out all these secrets because he talked to George
Newman? Dorman? It's something
with an N. Yeah. Noel?
Knowles, maybe?
Yeah. Like Nyle.
It's something like that.
Noyle, I think. George.
George. We know George.
Yeah, he was... about the place is locked up again and he's never getting out again and is now saying like his partner is against him because he's like, do you not think that you requested this, like they know I told you about this place and you got me locked up here again, this is all your fault, and they sent you with a partner, and he was like, and tell me, like, have you been smoking the stuff that they've been giving you? Like, did you smoke their cigarette? Or is that him or is that her?
No, it's him, and he's like, no, that's her. That's her.
Okay. I was like, we'll get to that later then.
Yeah, but no, he does point, like, and how, have you ever been separate from your partner?
Yeah.
Like, the kind of pushing the partner thing, like, well, who is this man to you? It's like, did you just meet him? Like, And then Leo's like, I trust him. He's like, he trusts Chuck.
Yeah.
Completely. But the George character is like pushing it, like, you're I think he says, like, you're a mouse in a cage, or a rat in a race or something. Like, it's a game. He's trying to make it seem like they're winning, essentially. And then Leo's like, no, you're full of shit and all this. And then he's like, you gotta let her go.
Yes.
Talking about his dead wife. Which then shows up in the cell. He sees her, and she's like, tell him why you can't. And, like, so he's having, like, these two different conversations.
Yeah, and George is still like, you gotta let her go. And she's like, you can't let me go.
There's a locket. You can't let me go.
Yeah.
And you gotta kill him. You gotta finish this. Stuff like that. And it's like, you can see he is
the crazy.
Losing it.
Yeah.
So it's a big part. So he leaves the word C eventually.
Because they talked about the lighthouse, and I was like, oh, I knew the lighthouse was sketchy. I was like, that's where they take the patients for experiments. And I was like, part of me is like, okay, is Teddy, like, I was like, I think Teddy, I'm definitely set that Teddy is living in a fictional world, but I'm not set on whether or not he's a patient, he's like patient Teddy, or if he's Laetus imagining he's Teddy, or if he's Teddy who's Teddy but just still living in a fictional world. I was like, he's living in a fictional world. I just couldn't figure out if he was actually Laetus or not.
Yeah.
Because I was like, my brain, I'm like, is this Outlast or Little Hope? Like, where is this going?
Which one?
Like,
is two references.
And like, this has got to be either Outlast, which would be like he's a patient, or it's Little Hope, and it's like where he's actually the person who killed everyone. Like, yeah. So I was like, yeah. And then, so
it's a done trope either way, but it's still a good trope.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
still
I
good.
still love this trope.
Yeah, it was still really good. Like, I enjoyed it, the whole thing. Like, there's no, And then, so he gets into the woods. He and Chuck are arguing.
And he has Andrew Laetus's file.
And he's like, I don't want to see
I'll read it later.
Yeah, he was like, I'll read it later.
And Chuck is pushing it, like, read it. And
like,
he's
this
like,
is what you were here for, read it. And he was like, yeah, I'll do it later. And then
he's like, well, the way back is this way. And then Leo's like, I'm gonna go to the lighthouse.
Yeah, because that's what he was wanting. He was wanting the lighthouse, and Chuck was like, no, like, we don't need to go to the lighthouse.
Why do you want to go there?
Like, we don't need to. The lighthouse, don't worry about it. And they get into, like, this argument, and then Leo walks away.
Yeah.
But then he kind of, like, starts walking and realizes that, I think it was like that it was getting dark, or like something was happening. He was like, I need to turn around and go back.
Yeah. And
when he got back to where they were, Chuck was no longer there.
Yeah, so he gets worried.
Yeah.
Because he still really likes and he trusts Chuck. It's his partner. And he's like, they've taken him. Yeah. That's where his mind went.
But then he kind of looks down and he sees something in the rocks, and I was like, oh my god, Chuck fell off the cliff. And then I was like, he gets down there, he starts climbing down to go and find him, and like the paper like flies up and is stuck to the rock, and he like almost falls trying to get it, and then he just shoves it in his pocket and keeps climbing down. He gets down there, you're like, oh no, it's just rocks. And then I was like, oh god, not the rats. This is like my 1922 nightmare all over again. I can't do this shit.
A lot of rats.
Yeah, because, like, when I watched 1922, which is, like, the movie based off, like, a Stephen King book, like, once it got to, like, where there was, like, rats swarming everything, I had to turn it off. I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, oh, this is making me so uncomfortable. So he climbs through all the rats to try and get to where the smoke is coming from out of the cave. He's probably thinking Chuck is in there.
Yeah.
And so he is working his way up to that. And then they get into the cave.
And he sees a woman. And he's like, let me see behind your back, because she's has a knife or whatever, and he's like, just don't use it on me, and she's like, I'm gonna keep this. But anyways, he finds out, he's like, oh, are you the real Rachel? And she is like, well, no, before I was a patient here, I worked here. She is the doctor that everyone keeps talking about. And she tells him, like, hey, if they think you're crazy at all, or if you have any past trauma, they're going to use it against you, and they used it against me. I was asking too many questions, etc., etc. And so she's basically like on the run because her former employers made her a patient here, and they're like trying to experiment. And she is like, so it feeds into that plotline. Yes. It's where it's like everything he's kind of been thinking turns out to be like, oh, this is happening. So he was right. And so they have a big, long conversation. Yeah. How did you feel about this part?
I really liked it. It was probably my favorite part of the movie.
Okay. At this point, are you buying it?
I actually did have it. I was like, OMG, the real Rachel Solando. I knew there was no way they just magically found Rachel and everything was okay. I was like, oh, she's an ex-doctor before they made her a patient. And then in parentheses I put, if we choose to believe that, which I was like, which I do because I never trusted the rest of it. But then I was like, but if I stick to my theory, then neither Rachels are real. So like,
I was curious how you felt about this part.
So I'm like, I believe that this could be like the real Rachel, like that this would be the most plausible, that because they would not have been able to just like find this like magic new Rachel who was perfectly fine after being out in the storm. But then I'm like, I'm still like questioning it at all because like I guess like before going into this movie, you guys already told me there was a twist ending. Yeah. So I was like not trusting anything that was happening. I was like, if we choose to believe that everything is happening this way, then I think this is the real Rachel. But if I'm sticking to my theory that he's living in a fictional universe, neither of them are real.
Yeah. So essentially, he asks her a bunch of questions about like how this whole operation works, who's in on it, and she's basically like, everyone that works here, you know, it's no secret, which would also go with your, like, you don't trust anyone here. It would play into that theory, because she's like, everyone's in on it. Everyone's in on the experiments of patients, of people. They go missing all the time, and they're doing all of these, like, government war tests on these people, and lobotomies and all that to change personalities and all this, and he's like, well, where at? And she's like, the lighthouse. Everything's always at the lighthouse, which now she is the third or fourth person to bring up the lighthouse to him. So he's already been like driven there multiple times, but this kind of hits it home.
Wanting to go and because when she was talking about how they made her crazy, I was like, I did want to touch on that because I did have to Google what like Kafkaesque meant. When she said that that's the Kafkaesque genius of it all, when they were talking about even when she denies that she's insane, that they just label it as part of her insanity, and that they're going to do the same thing to him. And
because he's too smart.
Yes.
Because I think she even says, like, you seem smart, Marshall. It's probably not going to work out for you.
Yeah. And she's like, do you have nightmares? Do you have headaches?
Do you have trauma?
Do you have trauma? And she was like, yeah.
They'll use it all against you, basically.
And what it actually means is that it's characteristic or reminiscent of the oppressive or nightmarish qualities of Franz Kafka's fictional world. Franz Kafka was a German-speaking bohemian novelist and short story writer, widely regarded as one of the major figures of the 20th century literature. His work fuses elements of realism and the fantastic, and it typically features isolated protagonists facing bizarre or surrealistic predicaments and incomprehensible socio-bureaucratic powers. So it's very in touch with like what's happening to Teddy. Yeah. He's like an isolated protagonist. Everyone's against him. You know, the bureaucratic powers, like, you know, the doctors are working with the government and they're trying to get him. And yeah, and it has been interpreted as exploring themes of alienation, existential anxiety, guilt, and absurdity. And the term Kafkaesque has entered the English language to describe situations like those found in his writing. So it's very, like, on the nose with where it was going. Yeah. Which I thought was cool. I like finding out new words. Apparently just fucking learned what mausoleum meant.
And absence.
It's
a big day for Skylar here on the podcast. So yes, I don't have any other like chronological notes written down. So if you want to take it away, I can chime in because at this point I was just kind of just watching the rest of the movie because like I remember what happens now. Yeah. So I'm free to banter with you if you wanted to bring up specific parts because I was interested. Once we got to this part, you as a first-time viewer, how it was going for you.
Yeah, my thing is just, like, I still don't trust anyone. Okay. I'm like, I want to trust them, but I still don't, because I'm like, at that point, I was so set in the theory that I'm like, none of this is real. He's imagining all of it. But then I'm like, I kind of want to trust this real Rachel, but I'm like, but I can't, because she's probably not real.
Yeah, it is very, like, what do I fucking believe at this point? Yeah. And that's the fun of movies like this or video games like this, because you're like, all of these are good theories. I don't know.
Yeah. But with Little Hope, I literally had no idea until the very end when he was getting put in jail. I was like, what?
Yeah, sorry if you wanted to play Little Hope and we just ruined it for you, but it is a very good storytelling of this type of twist. Would still definitely recommend it. I've played it twice now, and it's very good every time.
But yeah, it's just... Yeah, and then that's when you find out that there's the possibility that they were drugging him, not just with the aspirin, but with everything.
Yes, because she's the one who was like,
the cigarettes.
You're drinking the coffee, you're eating the food, you're at least smoking your own stuff, right?
And he was like, no.
Because you see, every time, someone else is always giving him a cigarette, always lighting his cigarette.
Because when he was on the boat, he's like feeling around in his jacket pocket, and he's like, where are my cigarettes? And then Chuck offers him one.
Yep, and it's a theme
throughout the rest.
Yep.
And I was like,
something you wouldn't even think about.
Yeah, until just like she said something, and you're like, oh, whoa,
yeah, shit.
Yeah, and I was like, Rachel is a total fucking badass. Like, to be hidden away in a cave after being declared insane because she thought the lobotomies and drugs and everything were barbaric, and she exposed everything to Teddy. I was like, she's a total badass.
Oh yeah, great character. And he's even like, I'm gonna blow this case off and I'll come back for you or whatever. And she's like, I move every night. Like, she moves during the day, stays awake at night, and like camps out in different places. And you're like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, she's a badass.
On this little island. You're like, how is she doing this? She's amazing.
And then so he leaves the cave, and the warden comes to get him.
Yes.
And some of the things he said were like, God gave us violence. Can my violence conquer yours? And I went, blah, blah, blah. I hate men. Take me back to Rachel. I was so fed up. I was like, shut the fuck up, man.
Yeah, it was very, I am man, hear me roar. Yeah. But it was also like, who says this kind of stuff? Also, you're very weird right now. Weird vibe coming from you. Which, when you were introduced to this character, it was after he had woken up from his drug thing in the dreams.
Like staring at him.
And he was like,
that's the warden, don't worry about him.
And he's like, he looks ex-military asshole. Like, he even knew, like, bad vibes right away. And that's all you ever saw of this man. Until he picks him up in a car and says all this creepy-ass shit. And at one point, he's like, when he drops him off, he says something along, maybe you have it actually quoted, I'm just trying my best to remember. He's like, what if I leaned in and, like, bit out your eye or something?
Oh, yeah, like, if I, like, leaned over and, like, took your eye out with my teeth, how far would you go to stop me? And Teddy was like, I'd like to see you try.
And he's like, that's the spirit. And then
like,
conversation ends, and you're like, what? Who is this man? Who is this warden?
Like, where did you just, like, what the fuck are you talking about right now?
Yeah, so that was, like, very skeevy vibes. Very weird, because it's like, how did he find him? And, like, weird, strange, huh?
Yeah, so he gets back into the mental institution, and Dr. Colley's there, and he asks about Chuck. And Dr. Colley was like, who's Chuck? And I was
like, my partner.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, he's gaslighting Teddy by saying Chuck doesn't exist and trying to find some grounds to keep him on Shutter Island as a patient. But when he asked again, Teddy was like, what partner?
Yeah, because he goes, who's Chuck? And Teddy's like, my partner. And he's like, you don't have a partner, Marshall.
You came here alone.
You came here alone. And then they have, like, this whole conversation, and then Teddy lights his own cigarette, which keep that in mind. And then the doctor's like, so, about your partner. And Teddy looks at him, he's like, what partner? Yeah. And you're like, what?
Because I was like, oh, I feel like we're going with what Rachel's trying to say. I'm like, oh, he's literally trying to, like, gaslight him and, like, find a reason to keep him here. Yeah. He's like, oh, you don't have a partner. Like, and then it's going to be like, he's hallucinating his partner, like, and then he's going to try and keep him there. And then he just turned it around and was like, what partner?
Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I was like, okay.
You're like, Mark Ruffalo, you don't exist.
Yeah. And then he's going to, like, the laundry room, I think, to try and find his suit or something. I don't know. He's, like, going somewhere.
Yeah, he uses an excuse. I think it was just, like, a lie, because he's still, at this point, he, like, wants to get to the lighthouse.
Yeah.
He wants to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Oh, yeah, because he was like, oh, I'm gonna go get my, like, I just need to get my stuff, and then I can leave on the boat.
Yeah, he's like, the case is closed, we're good, I can leave, everything's fine, they're gonna let me go. And so, he's walking, but he's walking a different way than he should, and he meets
the
German doctor.
Mm-hmm. And he tried to drug him with a sedative, but then Teddy got
fought
him
off
instead.
And drugged him. Mm-hmm. And then now he's like, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah. And then the dead wife shows up again, and I'm just like, bitch, can you go away?
Can you just die?
Like, can you just stay dead, please?
And she's like, you gotta leave. At this point, though, she's trying to be like, get out of here, you gotta leave. But he's like, I gotta find Chuck.
Yeah.
Again, you're like, what?
Because he's also...
And you're like, oh, was he playing into the doctor, maybe?
Yeah.
You know?
And that's why I was like, oh my god, can the dead wife just go away? Because she was trying to get him to leave. And I'm like, if Chuck is real, I'm like...
He's got to save Chuck. And so how does he do that? He gonna blow up a car.
Yeah. Because I was like, okay, I love how much Teddy wants to save Chuck, but like part of me is like, is Chuck even real? I was like, is he risking his way out of Crazy Town? And by Crazy Town, and I put in parentheses, I was like, and by Crazy Town, that's a dig at the psychotic doctors and nurses, not the patients.
Yeah.
Because I would never just call someone
because all these doctors are being crazy.
Yeah. I was like, I would never call someone with an actual mental illness crazy. But like, when I say Crazy Town, I'm like, I'm talking about the doctors and the nurses because they're fucking crazy.
The quote unquote sane ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, is he risking his way out of that for someone that isn't real?
And so, and he's like, I got, if they're hurting him, if you've got him, I've got to save him. And you're like, respect. I get it.
And so he's making his way to the lighthouse. He blew up a car as a diversion.
He blew up a car, and then what was the vision he saw upon blowing up the car? He saw his dead wife standing in front of the explosion, and a little girl from his dreams walks over and holds her hand, and they just, like, burst into flames together. And you're like, great, let's knock that one out later. And he runs away to the lighthouse.
Yeah. He's just like... all right, bye.
We'll unpack that later. It's fine.
What's that, like that Avon Jogia audio from TikTok where he was like, well, I don't have time to unpack all of that.
Yeah. But you see that and you're like, oh, maybe this is him getting away of his delusions and his visions. Like,
it's like that was him getting up. Yeah. Because... everyone's been telling him, like, he needs to let her go. Like, maybe this was when he decided to go after Chuck instead of, like, leaving.
To choose his friend, to choose reality.
Yeah. And, so then they disappear, and you're like, okay.
And you're like, oh,
he let her go.
He's evolving as a person.
Yeah. So he goes to the lighthouse. He's making his way there. He has to knock out a guard. He steals the guard's rifle, and he takes it and makes his way up the stairs. And I was like... the lighthouse has very nice and fancy stairs. I like those stairs. I was like, they belong in my cottage that leads up to my cozy reading library. And so he gets up to the room. There's a door. And he goes in the room. And Dr. Colley is sitting there.
Baby, why are you all wet?
Yeah. I was like, what?
Because that is not the first time this quote has been said.
Yeah. I was like, why is Dr. Colley saying it? I was like, this is weird. I was like, I don't like this.
Why does he know this quote?
I was like, what?
Excuse me. And also, like, why is that what you find in a lighthouse? A man at a desk.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go.
I was just like, this whole thing is weird. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, what is happening right now? And so, yeah, Dr. Colley's there. Teddy's got the gun up to him. He's like, you can try. It's not loaded. Teddy checks. It's not loaded.
And he's like, what did you do to the guard? Did you kill him or whatever? Like, basically, he wants to know that the guard's okay. And Teddy's like, he's fine. He takes a call. He's like, yeah, he's here. He hangs up. Or he's here, like, have the doctor to see to your man before he comes here. And you're like, I thought you were the doctor. What? Mm-hmm. The other doctor's on leave. And so then he starts talking to Teddy.
And Teddy is, talking about Chuck and
like,
about
where
the
is
experiments
Chuck?
And how he talked to Rachel, the real Rachel. And I was like, stop fucking talking, Teddy. You're incriminating yourself. He's just going to tell you you're crazy and keep you here.
But yeah, because he's calling him out on all of his suspicions.
Yeah.
The experiments, the Nazi stuff, all of it is coming out right now. And you're like... you don't look good right now, Teds.
And, Dr. Colley is like, are you okay? Like, are you...
you good?
Because he was basically like, you look crazy. Like, you look like you're having a mental breakdown. Are you okay?
Yeah, and he's like, how... he says how is something, but basically, like, he shakes...
yeah, his tremors. Yeah.
So he's like, how are your tremors? And Teddy's like, what?
What? Tremor?
And then he's like, you're shaking. And you see Teddy, he's like, he's having tremors. And he's like, and he's like, it's from withdrawal, like.
Yeah, and then Teddy was like, like, that's...
I haven't had a drink in
2 years, like, there's no way. And he was like, no, it's from the clomazepine?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't write it down, but some drug.
And he was like, what? He's like, what are you talking about? And then that's when Dr. Colley starts explaining everything to him about how he was actually admitted here 24 months ago, and it's been 2 days since he's had his clomazepine, or whatever it's called. Yes. And that he's withdrawing because he hasn't taken his medication in 2 days because they were just letting him play out his delusion.
Yes, so basically, the twist.
Yeah.
He is a patient here. He has been for 24 months because something terrible he did. He can't live with it. Mm-hmm. They want to lobotomize him.
Yeah.
Dr. Colley is like, no, let me try my method. Mm-hmm. And his method is to give him the run of the place for 2 days, let him live out this world he kind of built for himself, and just everyone has to play along with it. Mm-hmm. Which at that point then you get while everyone is being so weird, because they're like, you're a patient here and you're bossing me around, I don't like it, and you're like, oh god. And so you think that's that. It's like, oh, so nothing else is real, Chuck's not real.
Yeah. Because when that happened, I was like, wait, am I right? He is a patient. He has fantastical delusions and is an untrustworthy narrator. And he is Andrew Laetus and was created in a fictive life. I fucking knew it. I called that shit from the beginning. I've learned from Little Hope.
Yeah, and then
you find out
the doctor has a whiteboard, and it has Teddy, whatever his last name
Daniels.
is. Teddy Daniels, and then dash Andrew Laetus, and then, what did he say his wife was? Dolores something, and then Rachel something.
Yeah.
But they're all anagrams of each
other. Mm-hmm. And that's how he came up with those names.
And he's trying to get him to focus and admit it, but then Teddy is still going on and on, like, you're not gonna trick me, blah, blah, blah. I know this is a trap. You're trying to make me look insane. And the Dr. Colley at this point is just like, please just admit it so I can prove that my method works.
So we don't
try so hard.
We don't have to give you a lobotomy.
He's just like so much wants him to just come to terms with it. Trying his best, Dr. Conley. And then Chuck, yes.
Yeah, Chuck turns up and
he comes in the door. He's like, what's up, boss?
He's Dr. Sheehan.
The whole time.
Yeah. And so Dr. Sheehan never went on vacation.
Nope, he was just with Teddy the whole time. Because they couldn't leave him.
Yeah, they could just leave him alone the entire time. Although they did leave him alone a couple times.
Which is questionable. But I guess he was in secluded places for the most part. And the doctor had to go look after the patients that he almost killed while, so. But yes, that is another twist.
You get to, like, what happened and why he was there.
Yes, because he's still denying it at this point, even with Mark Ruffalo's character now being like, this is all true, listen. He even grabs the little pistol.
Yes, and turns out it was a toy.
Well, he shoots the doctor, or he thinks he does, and you see, like, the bullets go in, the blood splatter. He looks at Mark, and then the doctor's like, come on, Teddy. And he looks back, and he's not shot, he's not dead, and then he just breaks the gun. It wasn't real. Like, nothing has been real, and then he's still in denial, and then the doctor brings out 3 photographs. Mm-hmm. And they are of 3 dead children. The 3 children from his dreams. And he's like, these are your children. And he's like, I don't have children. And he's like, are you going to deny them their life? And, like, pushes them, and then it gets to his daughter, whose name was Rachel. Mm-hmm. And then he grabs it, and then you see the full flashback of what happened.
Yes.
Is this where you cried?
Yes.
I was kind of waiting for you to be like, this is where I cried. I was like, I bet I know where she cried.
Yeah. So what you find out is that his wife set the apartment on fire because she is manic depressive, and she was in, like, her depressive episode. She just wanted everything to end.
And even Mark's character, when he's explaining that, he's like, and you ignored it. You stayed away. So he was in denial about his wife's well-being, mental well-being.
He just stayed at work, and then when he got home, he would drink.
He was a marshal. Yeah. He was an actual, and he, like, was working on cases and stuff, but yes. He would come home, and he was an alcoholic, and it was a big thing in their marriage. It is implied that she was, like, mentally and verbally abused by him through the alcohol. But he also just, like, ignored her manic depression.
Yeah. And then when she was having one of her... I'm not sure if it said it was, like, a manic episode or a depressive episode.
It was a bad episode.
It was just a bad episode.
It was bad.
She had set the apartment on fire. And they had gone to, like, a cabin or, like, their summer home or something by a lake. And he comes home from working a case. And
he's, like, talking to her, like...
gets a drink and is, like, calling outside. And it's like, oh, like...
And then that music starts.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And then,
she's swinging.
She's on the swing. And he asks, like, oh, how are the kids? Like, where are the kids? Like,
they're at school.
And she was like, they're at school. And he was like, nice try. It's a Saturday. There's no schooling on Saturdays. And she's like, my school is. And I was like, what?
Don't like that.
I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. So he's kind of looking around, and he looks towards the lake, and he sees 3 bodies floating upside down.
Yeah.
And she had drowned them in the lake.
Yes.
And I was like, I saw a lot of this happening this way, but I didn't see that. I thought he would have been the one to have actually killed him, not that way it happening. And then I was like, that's when I went, okay, yeah, I'm crying. The flashback to him finding his drowned children in the lake, I am in tears. He tried to
revive them.
He was, like, trying to, like, give them, like, mouth-to-mouth CPR, and he was, like, screaming no, and, like, going in after them.
Jumped in the lake,
and picked all 3 of them up, and was, like, screaming no, and trying to help it. I was literally in tears. I was so upset. And she was like, we can be happy now. Like, everything is fine. Like, it's fine. Like, let's have a meal. Like, we can take them inside.
There are little dolls.
There are living
dolls. Yeah, that's what she said.
And I went, literally the note I took, living dolls, and then all this Spanish, I was like, fuck you, you bitch. Yeah, and so when you said, like, when she had said the thing earlier, what did you, because I forgot what it was now, but she had said something about, like...
See, aren't they beautiful?
Yeah. The see, aren't they beautiful? And I was like, oh, we'll talk about that later, because when she called them living dolls. Yeah. And I was like...
And she's like, we can take them on a picnic.
Yeah, we can...
You dress them up.
And I was like,
we'll give them a bath. And, like, she starts, like, choking up, and then she's like, put me out of my misery.
Yeah. And I was like, fuck you! I was like, you suck. Like, it made me cry. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's why there was blood in the nightmare before she turned to ash, because he shot her. And I was like...
He shot her.
But to be fair, deserved.
She was very mentally unwell.
Yeah. But she also killed her children.
She did.
Which it did remind me of that
She never got the help she needed.
That's also true. But it reminded me of that book that I read in AP Lit about this... I don't remember what it's called, but it was about this lady...
With wallpaper?
No.
Oh, I thought that's where you're going. Right.
No, it was about this lady, and she had 2 kids, and she was, like, married, and she hated her life, and she was depressed, and it was, like, set in, like, the 20s or the 40s. But she had, like, had these big dreams for herself, but, you know, she was a woman in that time period, and so she had to get married and have children, and she just hated everything. And so she would go out, and she, like, would meet these other people who were, like, free, and she wanted to be free like them, and then she walked into the ocean and tried to drown herself.
Sounds a little familiar, but I can't pinpoint it. It is a very common thread also, like, women becoming mothers. They resent their children. They don't want to be mothers. They want to be free. Yeah, so...
I get, like, that she didn't get the help she wanted, but also, like, I don't know, part of, like, where I'm coming from is, like, I mean, one of the things, like, my mom has said was, like, she's like, yeah, I never really wanted kids, like, you know, your dad thought he was sterile, which is one of the reasons I married him, and I was like, that's a great thing to tell me, as your child. So I'm just like, so instead of seeing that, I don't see where she's coming from. I see where, like, the kids are coming from, because I think that's how I relate to it.
I get
as
that.
A kid of a mom who didn't want kids.
And I think it's valid. Yeah, I get that completely. But I don't know if she ever, like, it comes out that she didn't want kids. it was more that he ignored her needing help, because he even says that one day she told him that she has bugs in her brain.
Yes,
and they won't let her rest or something. Like, she's going insane
in her brain,
and like she
can't get away from
it. It was more of that she was crying out for help from him, and he just kept ignoring it. And so then he felt the blame for the murder of his children, because he's like, I didn't help her when she needed it, and this was all she could think to do.
Yeah.
And she essentially begged him to kill her.
Yeah. And, like, part of me is like, I'm like...
Just very sad.
I get where she's coming from. I get where he's coming from. I'm like, part of it, I'm like, yeah, you should have, like, done something, like, listened to her, tried to get her the help she needed. But then another part of me is like, you can't take your mental illness out on other people.
No, you can't. But I mean, especially back then.
But, like, you don't know, like, there's not enough about it. Like, people just brush it off.
And people barely now talk about it. And it's still something that people are like, don't talk about your therapy. Don't talk about your anxiety or your depression or... Yeah, but definitely back then, it was like, don't talk about this.
Because, like, I'm still getting to, like, where I can talk about it. Like, when I told you yesterday, I was like, are you mad at me? And you were like, no, why would I be mad at you? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I feel like you're mad at me. And you're just like, you haven't really talked to me or, like, looked at me. And I feel like you're really mad at me. And it could just be, like, my anxiety. And, like, because it's hard, but, like, and I'm just getting to a point where I can just be like, it might just be my anxiety. But, like, I kind of feel like you're mad at me. Like, can we talk about it? Like, are you mad at me? Like, do you hate me now? And I'm like, yes, it's my anxiety. And, like, it's hard for, like, because I literally went the entire morning thinking that you were mad at me before. I was like, oh my God. Brittany will be okay if I ask her about it. I'm like, Brittany won't be upset with me if I ask her about it. But no. I'm like still working up the courage to like just talk about the fact that like my anxiety is telling me like you are mad at me and you hate me now and we are like no longer going to be on speaking terms because you're mad at me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I do.
So I get where like yeah, because like even now like it's hard to like bring it up and like I'm just now learning that it's okay to bring it up and it's okay to be like, hey, my anxiety is really bad right now, like this is what I'm thinking, like is this how it actually is or is it just like my anxiety that's making it this way? And it's hard to bring up, but like I've gotten better at it. But back then it was really like it was like absolutely taboo, like you could not bring it up to anyone ever at all.
Yeah, and some people like I just have, like, anxiety and depression, but I don't, like, full-on visualize delusions or anything, or hallucinations, and I don't have bugs clicking in my brain, which I can only imagine how crazy that would make you feel, quote-unquote crazy, as a person, because it's just, it was a very extreme form of, like, manic depression. Mm-hmm. There was no help for her, really, at that point. Being the time, place, and her being a woman and all of that in and of itself, she's supposed to be at home with the children, etc., mm-hmm. etc. And it drove her too far. Not that it was justifiable, really, or good. I'm not saying that at all. She murdered her children and then, like, laughed about it. That's not great.
So they could be living dolls.
It's not great.
So it's not great, yeah, but...
But I do just want to be like, but it probably could have,
with her.
It could have been avoided.
Mm-hmm.
If in the beginning when she first brought it up, he didn't be like, shut up, you're stupid, let me drink my alcohol. Mm-hmm. So even he's like, this is on me.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, kind of.
Like not completely, but yes.
But no, you did not drown your children.
Yeah.
And you were very upset about it, but you also at least have the forethought to be like,
but I didn't ignore her.
My chosen partner.
The person who I, like, told that, like, vowed to be with her forever, and, like...
And that's, like, it's a very gray area. Like, neither of them are correct.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, society as a whole is not correct.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the bigger point.
Yeah.
So...
I get that. Yeah. It's a very, like, yeah.
It's a very icky situation as a whole. So you get that flashback, you see what was actually going on, he kind of comes back to himself, and you realize that he had passed out during this, so he wakes up in a bed, and he has a nurse there who is the Rachel that he met in her cell, so it was a nurse was acting as Rachel, you realize. And so then the two doctors, Mark Ruffalo and Ben Kingsley, are there, and they're like, who are you and what's happening? He's like, I'm Andrew Laetus. and he's finally talking about everything.
Yeah. And Dr. Colley's like, I need to hear you say what happened, like what you did. I need you to say it out loud.
Because he, as a doctor, took a big gamble on this one patient, who he quoted, they said, was their most dangerous patient, was Andrew Laetus, quote-unquote, Teddy. So he
was a marshal, he had training.
He was smart.
Yeah.
But he was completely delusional, and he did suffer from, I talk about it, delusional disorder. Not schizophrenia, they are different. We'll talk about it. But he said, you are our most dangerous patient. They want to lobotomize you, but I want to save you. And I'm going to give you 2 days to figure out your shit yourself. But I need you to tell me right here, right now, that you accept all of this and that you know what's going on and what is reality. And so he kind of does.
Which we'll get to that, because I was like, I'm right about everything. Like, this was all, like, his fictional world that he created. I'm right. And then it was like, they take a walk, he sits on the stairs.
Well, yeah, so he's sitting in his bed, he wakes up, he's like, yes, everything is great. And you're like, okay, he admits it, we're all in the clear. Flash cut to, we don't know, later in the day, or a new day completely.
Yeah.
He's sitting on the stairs, he's looking around, he's kind of looking at all of the people working. Mark Ruffalo's character comes up, offers him a cigarette, and he goes, what's our next move? And then Mark Ruffalo goes, what do you want to do, boss? Or what you thinking, boss? Or something. But he uses that word, boss, again,
boss.
Which is what he always used. And he says, we got to get out of here. Whatever, like, he's back on his delusion. And you see Mark Ruffalo look over at Ben Kingsley, shake his head, and he kind of sighs. And the other doctor basically gives the okay to lobotomize him. He gives up on his mission to save. And then Mark Ruffalo just continues to talk about it and talk him up. And Leo's like, don't worry, they're not on to us. And then Mark's like, we're too smart for them. And he kind of looks at him. He's like, takes a second. He's like, yeah, we are. And then the people come up, and some of them have their tools, and they're walking towards him. And he goes, this place makes me think. And he's like, what's that, boss? And he goes, is it better to live as a monster or to die as a good man?
Yep, I have that.
And then he walks away. Mark Ruffalo stands up, and he says, Teddy? And then he walks away, he goes with the people, and the movie ends.
Yeah. And I was like, that can't be the end! No! Yeah.
So yes, I fully think that he did not regress. It was a fake regression. He knew that he was Andrew Laetus. He knew what he had done, and he was punishing himself by death through lobotomy. Is my theory, because
that ending line,
he even when he was looking at Mark to make sure he took the bait to be like, I'm still crazy and I'm still delusional, and made sure he shook his head, and the other doctor reluctantly gave his okay, or gave in to be like, this isn't working, but it did work in my opinion. And then so he does that little quote I'm gonna die as a good man, thinking that I'm a good man, people to believe that I thought I was this grand marshal solving a case. But all the while, he knew what he did, and he was essentially punishing himself, is what I fully believe. Is that kind of where you're at, too?
I kind of missed the part where he shook his head. I could tell Dr. Colley was staring at him, and I was like, okay, so is he actually not thinking I was like, does Dr. Colley know he still thinks he's crazy? Are they going to lobotomize him? Or is this actually
I believe that Andrew, or Teddy, was acting, and he wanted to make sure that Mark Ruffalo's character took the bait, because they were still testing him, which is why he went over there, offered him a cigarette, called him boss, and all this. And once he made a comment about, still in the delusion, we got to get out of here, we got to expose them, he kind of looked at Dr. Connolly and slightly shook his head, it didn't work, basically. And then he was like, okay, you can do your thing, warden, whatever you want to do, because it was the warden who was there next to him and who started to walk towards them to take him away. And he even gets up willingly and walks with them, so. And then he does that little cryptic quote, kind of also letting him know, nah, you guys did good. You did do it. And then went. So that's what I believe, at least. If you have a different opinion, let me know, but I think you're wrong.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if he was like, because I thought he might have still been in his delusion. I didn't think he had come out.
No, I fully think at that point, he had accepted it, but it was still something he deep down couldn't accept and live.
Yeah.
It was very much like, I did this, I accept it, but I don't want to be alive. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to let them kill me, but they're all going to think that I think this, and so then I can quote-unquote die as a good man, instead of living as the monster that I think I am. Because he blames himself for his wife and his 3 kids, which that's a lot. And now, do you want to have anything else specific, or do you want to talk about all the, like, tells that were there throughout?
We can do that.
Okay.
I don't have really anything else to add.
Okay. So especially upon, like, a second or even a third watch, there's a lot of tells, but specifically with Mark Ruffalo's character. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty obvious when they first get to the prison and the guards are like, oh yeah, doctor, they're talking about the doctor, they're like, this is how, like, beating him up, like, how were you said, like, I automatically don't trust this doctor. If you look, at that point, they're all, like, nervously looking at Mark Ruffalo's character when they're talking about the doctor, like, oh yeah, he's a great guy, and, like, trying to see if this is what they are supposed to say. Also, being a doctor, Mark Ruffalo doesn't know about guns, so when he hands in his gun, he also hands in the holster, because he doesn't know how he didn't know how to unholster it. Which was a very clever, subtle play.
I just didn't get what was going on. I was like,
he fiddles with it for so long, and then he eventually just hands over the whole holster instead of just the gun, like a marshal would.
Yeah, see, I was like...
And you're like,
When that happened, I was like...
Because he's just completely playing a character he doesn't know anything about.
I was just like, is he, like, that new of a marshal? I couldn't figure... I was like, why is he... I was like, did he just really not want to give up his gun that badly that he was just that frustrated? And so I just could... Yeah, I did notice that was, like, really weird, but I didn't get connected as to that's why it was. But yeah.
Yeah, and when you... If you go back to the first watch, you're like, why are these, like... staff being so hesitant or being so weird about being interviewed by these marshals, and then you're like, so this is their most dangerous patient, sitting them down and yelling at them all to talk, and so why wouldn't they all just be like, I'm not gonna look at you, I'm not gonna make eye contact, I'm not gonna talk to you more than I have to. Mm-hmm. So that explains that a lot. When they're at the meeting the German doctor for the first time, and then Leo's character gets really agitated and breaks the glass, you can kind of see Chuck and Dr. Crossley kind of look at each other like, we gotta get him out of here, this is bad. Like, they even knew, like, right then they were worried because it was aggression coming through, and being a patient, you don't want that from your most dangerous patient. Yeah. There's more, when they're interviewing the other patients, if you notice, there are doctors behind the patients that are being interviewed, and there are, or like guards or whatever, and there's also a guard behind Teddy's character, but not behind Mark Ruffalo's character, because he's a doctor. Mm. So that's a subtle one. And you're like, huh. And then when the one lady who murdered, or like her husband with an axe is talking, and she is obviously coached on what to say, because Rachel's not a real person, so she had to be told, and she kind of like is looking around like, this is what I'm supposed to say, right? And then he brings up the doctor that Mark Ruffalo is, Dr. Sheen or whatever, Sheehan. And when she talks about him, she looks right at Mark, and she's like, oh no, he's a great guy. Like, she's so nervous, and she looks directly at him when she's talking about him, because you can't do that when you're like, they're right there. You're going to look at the person you're talking about. So that's another big tell. Another interesting tell that could be kind of inferred is in the first half of the movie, Leo's character won't light his own cigarette. Probably because in the back of his mind, he attributes that to arson, which is connected to his, like, wife and the kids and the murder and all that. And then when he gets finally towards C, and it starts kind of all crumbling around, that's when he starts lighting his matches. And it's very, like, subtle, but you're very, like, whoa, that's cool, little plot, that they, like, wouldn't let him light it to begin with. or whatever. And then also, like, at the very beginning of the movie, he's throwing up on the boat, probably because he's going through withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Not because of he's seasick. But it's more likely withdrawal, and he doesn't have cigarettes because they're not going to give him anything that he can actually have.
Anything that he could, like, hurt himself with, which a cigarette you can hurt yourself with. Like.
Yeah, so essentially they probably took him off of his meds on this boat and, like, just, like, had the boat, like, drive around the island. And then once he kind of knocked out of it, that's why it was meeting your partner there. It's because they were always together, but they had to, like, clear his mind, and he had to get sick and be like, oh, so you're my partner, and he just didn't question it at all, like, why am I meeting you here? It's because I came from the asylum to the boat and back. I was never in Boston. So yeah, it's very cool. Any other things you want to talk about? How'd you like it?
It was really good. It made me really upset, though.
It upset you?
Yeah.
Just because of the children, or just
like, mainly the children, and just, like, how sad everything was. Because, like,
I mean, yeah, it's heavy issues.
Yeah, because I texted Brittany Friday night at 10:30, and I was like, this movie is fucking with my brain, because, like, I think I've got it figured out, but then I'm like, what if I'm wrong? And I was like, you didn't tell me this movie would make me cry. And I was like, I finished the movie. I have 9 pages of notes. Also, screw you and Richard for suggesting this movie, and screw myself for picking this movie as the finalist. You sent me cat laughing emoji. Didn't say shit.
Yes, but no, it's been a while since I'd watched it, like I said. So upon rewatching it, I was like, oh shit, this is a really good movie. And then I was also like, oh, because I watched it Thursday, you watched it Friday. And I was like, oh, I think Skylar really liked it as much as she likes psychology. Mm-hmm. So I was really interested in like how you would feel about it. And I'm glad you brought up, like, Little Hope, because I wasn't even thinking of, like, game references.
Oh, I had Outlast, Little Hope,
yeah,
like, Beautiful Mind.
Thinking of
I was, like,
else.
thinking of all of that. Because, like, for some reason, easily, like, psychology, I can connect it to 1,000 other things. For me,
that makes sense, because you love it so much.
It just clicks in my brain. I'm like, oh, well, this connects to this because of, like, the kind of way that these things play out, even if it's different. Because, like, if you look at A Beautiful Mind, like, he was schizophrenic, so he was imagining his friends, whereas, like, Teddy was delusional.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing.
So he wasn't imagining his friends, but he was putting them in different roles.
Yeah, I did write that down. Teddy Daniels, a.k.a. Andrew Laetus, he suffers from delusional disorder, which is not the same as schizophrenia, and it's less common. So basically, it's the presence of delusions without any other symptoms of psychosis is what makes it different. So the hallucinations and all that, like, that schizophrenia has, delusional disorder is just the presence of delusions without any of that other stuff, and it's apparently far less common. So, but that is what his character suffered from.
Yeah, and schizophrenia actually isn't as uncommon as people think it is. It mainly presents in males in their early 20s is when it starts presenting, but it is, like, it's not as uncommon as people think it is, but it's so stigmatized that just, like, but that's how a lot of mental illness is. It's so heavily stigmatized.
That's true.
Especially schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder is heavily stigmatized. Even autism is stigmatized, like, really ridiculously.
Yeah.
But that's a topic for another time.
I mean,
to do with this movie.
No, just mental health in general, though. Like, take care of it.
Yeah.
Don't judge people for it.
Talkspace, if you want to sponsor us, I really like therapy, but I'm poor.
Same. I probably need it.
Oh, I definitely need therapy.
How would you rate it out of 10?
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10? I give it an 8. 8 out of 10. Good movie. Definitely. If you've never watched it and for some reason you wanted to listen to this whole episode and get it spoiled from you, I would still recommend watching it.
Yeah, I definitely still watch it.
Because even if you know the twist, then you can do the really fun thing of, like, picking up all the clues. Because there are so many. I didn't even talk about them all because they did a really good job. Especially, like, just watch the background characters whenever Leo's in a scene or Mark and Leo together. And then just look at the people around them and you're like, oh, they did good. They did good weaving that in.
Yeah. And so, like, with my first time watching it, like, yeah, I kind of called out the ending, but I didn't pick up on all the subtle little clues.
Yeah, there's a lot, so that's a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely just watch it for that alone if you've never seen it. And if you have, and you have different opinions than us, you can let us know at
Sip and Spin Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and then sipandspinpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, we'll talk about it with you. If we ever get movies again, we can take suggestions also if you have movies, because we don't like to make decisions.
Yeah. Also, I haven't seen a lot of movies. So.
Yeah, so I'm excited when we get movies just because I get to make Skylar watch movies that I've seen. But maybe you can stump me. That can be your challenge. But if there's nothing else to say about this...
Oh, well, do you want to plug your stuff?
Well, do you want to spin first?
Okay.
I mean, usually we spin and then plug, but I was just going to be tying it into the movie. Yeah, okay.
Let me get up the drink wheel.
But no, I can plug while you do that. So yes, if you want to reach me, you can find me under most things at Whimsy Dream or Whimsy Dreams. It is, of course, always linked. Skylar on everything is Gleam YKS, which is sky backwards.
You got it.
I got it after like the second time. But yeah, it's always linked in the show, so you can find us. We're here, we're there, we're everywhere if you let us. You ready to spin?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Oh, wait, that didn't go.
I'm happy about the drink choice. No, not again! Well, it's fine.
It's just, this wheel wants us to be like the good podcasts we listen to.
Yeah, because we listen to these podcasts more than anything else.
But I know, it's so draining to talk about.
I know.
So, we spun the wheel, and for the third time now, next week we will be doing true crime.
Again, I swear we have more options.
We have so many more options we have never hit, but this wheel, man, it likes...
Like, we've hit 5 out of the 14.
I know, it's crazy. And we've hit this one the most, so... I didn't know I had thumb holes. I'm not supposed to have thumb holes.
Yeah, that's just a broken sleeve.
This is the first time I've worn this, so that's fun.
Oh! So, Brittany just has a hole in her hoodie, and it's the first time she's worn it, so...
Oh, that's true crime right there in and of itself. Killing of my outfit. What's our drink?
My choice.
Okay. Do you have a choice, or will it be a surprise?
We could do vodka Sprites.
I mean, it's your choice. Yeah. Don't make it a question, make it a statement.
Let's do vodka Sprites.
Alright.
We're talking about true crime and drinking vodka Sprites.
Whew, it's gonna be a white girl episode.
Listen, I love vodka.
I know you do. You know, I don't know if I've ever actually, like, had a legit just vodka Sprite. There's always been, like, other stuff, so... Next week, I will sip on a vodka Sprite.
Yeah, I just know you don't like Coke, so I wasn't good at... So, we'll do a vodka Sprite.
I'll sip on that, and then I'll sip with you guys next week.
Ew!
Bye!
I hate when she does that.
Oh, I had to. It was so
Bye.
Good.